I'm here with Alexander Mercouris, editor-in-chief of the Duran. Alexander, let's talk about Julian Assange and give an update to our viewers as to what's going on. Assange, in his appearance before the court, before one of the courts that he was appearing before, the judge gave him a 50-week sentence for skipping bail back in 2012. In one of the instances, he went up before Judge Michael Snow, and let me get the quote for you. And he said, Judge Snow asked him if he wished to consent to surrender himself for extradition. Assange said, and I quote, "I do not wish to surrender myself for extradition. For doing journalism, that's won many, many awards and affected many people." Alexander, give us an update as to what's happening with Julian Assange.
Right. Can I explain? Because the litigation, the court cases are extremely complicated, and we're now in the usual British English legal maze. Our legal system, I'm afraid, is a very complicated legal system in this country. There are two separate sets of legal proceedings involving Julian Assange. One was heard on Wednesday, and it was in connection with his skipping bail back in 2012. This was in connection with the Swedish allegations of sexual misconduct. Now, if I can explain, Julian Assange was offering at that time to meet with Swedish investigators in England, but he didn't want to go back to Sweden. There was very complex litigation involved, connected with a request from Sweden to have him extradited to Sweden, which he was refusing. Over the course of that case, he was granted bail by the police. This is not by the court, by the way, but by the police. He decided that instead of attending court, he would skip that police bail, and he fled, as we all know, to the Ecuadorian embassy. And he did that because he said the charges against him, well, in fact, they weren't charges, the allegations against him in Sweden were phony, and that it was all really part of a plan by the US and Swedish and British authorities to get him to Sweden, which is very, very lax extradition procedures, and which would have then immediately extradited him to the US. Now, the important thing to say is this is the case that came up before the court on Wednesday. The judge in that case was Judge Deborah Taylor. Assange explained to Deborah Taylor through his lawyer why he wasn't prepared to attend court in response to that police bail and why he went to the Ecuadorian embassy. He gave what I thought was a very detailed and very convincing and plausible account about his very reasonable and very profound fears of being extradited to the United States if he was extradited to Sweden, to the astonishment and horror of Assange's supporters and of many other people. The judge, paying no attention to any of the points that Assange and his lawyers were making, sentenced him to 50 weeks, that's almost a year in prison, which is just about the highest possible sentence you can get for this kind of thing. Now, I think that is a wildly disproportionate sentence, wholly inappropriate for a case where somebody skips police bail. He's already been in effective detention for 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, not just my opinion, by the way, but also the UN's opinion, and he's already spent several weeks in Belmarsh prison. So I think that was an extremely cruel, over-the-top, frankly vindictive sentence. Now, the other hearing, which was on Thursday, the following day, was in response to the US extradition request. Now, this was a procedural hearing. The judge, who was Judge Snow, who comes across as a much more measured and shall we say, open-minded judge than the judge on the previous day, Deborah Taylor. He invited Assange, which he is required to do, to say whether or not Assange himself would agree to go to the United States to face charges there. he put to Assange that if Assange did that, that would shorten the legal proceedings, which might be in his interests to do, and Assange made the comments you said. He is not prepared to go to the United States. He has very well-grounded concerns about what might happen to him if he were to go to the United States. He feels that he has committed no criminal charge that he should answer for. He has been, by his estimation, an exemplary journalist. He's always acted in the public interest and for the public good. And as he correctly told Judge Snow, what he has done has earned him awards for his journalistic activity. So, in effect, Assange threw down the gauntlet, threw down the challenge to the British and US legal systems, to the British legal system, which had cruelly sentenced him to 50 weeks the day before. He said, this is a case I'm going to fight in every court, in every place. I don't accept these charges. And of course, through the British, he's saying the same thing to the United States.
So now Assange is done with the one case. In other words, the skipping bail, that's over. Yeah. He's been sentenced. Yeah. That's done. He has to serve that time. And while he's serving that time, he's going to be going through this extradition case. Is that how this is playing out?
That's exactly right. Now, he can, I think, appeal that decision. And I don't think he's going to. And I'll explain why. The judge did say that though she was sentencing him to 50 weeks, he would be released from detention after 25 weeks. I think his lawyers will advise him that if he appeals the sentence, he runs the risk that possibility of being released after 25 weeks will be taken away, so that it may be in his best interests and the fastest way to get out of prison if he actually just goes ahead with this sentence and lets himself stay in the prison for those 25 weeks. It's a difficult decision to make. My impression is that he's prepared to fight all the legal arguments and all the legal challenges that are being put to him. But in a sense, the bail issue is the smallest one. Confronting the extradition case must be his priority. It's better that he's out of prison to do that than in prison. Though I have to say, there's a possibility the British may decide to keep him in detention throughout the extradition case anyway. But that remains to be seen.
And now, in order for him to get extradited, the court has to rule that he has to get extradited. They have to rule against him. And then the government, from what I understand, the Home Secretary then has to sign off on it as well. Is that correct?
That's right. The Judge Snow, who came across to me, as I said, as a much more open-minded judge than the judge on the previous day, explained that there would be very, very long court process in this case. The next hearing, which will be a procedural hearing, like the one on Thursday, will be on the 30th of May. And the first proper hearing in which there's going to be proper legal argument is going to be on the 12th of June. So we're looking at a very long legal process, could be a year. And then, of course, there's also potential appeals, first to the High Court and then to the British Supreme Court. So we could be looking at a year, perhaps even 2 years of very, very tough legal arguments in various courts, with the case going ever higher to ever more senior courts before a final decision on whether to extradite into the United States is taken or not.
Yeah, but just to be clear, he's going to be going through this extradition process, 50 weeks in a UK prison, and then probably prolonged in some sort of detention. There's no chance that the US can just, grab him and take him back to the US, or the UK can, Theresa May or someone in the UK could just say, the government say, all right, extradite him?
No,
He has
I
to go
don't.
through this process.
He has. They have to go through this process. Britain has a very, very lopsided extradition treaty with the United States. The Blair government agreed an absolutely outrageous extradition treaty, which, in theory, means that Britain has little discretion to refuse extradition requests from the United States. What has actually happened since that treaty was agreed is that the courts, the British courts, have pushed back on it, and they made very clear that they will simply process extradition cases like this in a very serious way. So it's not going to end quickly, and I don't think there's any possibility he'll just be arrested and put on a plane and sent to the United States. I think that would be an outrageous thing to do, and I think if anybody tried to do that, I predict that his lawyers would immediately seek a court injunction to stop it happening. There would be an automatic court order. Any airplane that was about to leave would be blocked by the court from doing so. And it would be a very, very remarkable and extraordinary thing indeed if the British government simply disregarded a court order of that kind. So I think he's going to be not perhaps 50 weeks, but 25 weeks in prison under this sentence. I think there is a possibility that they will try to keep him in prison beyond that in connection with the extradition case. It's not a certainty, but I think we're looking at perhaps 2 years of detailed court processes before we reach a final outcome.
And finally, Alexander, he's sentenced to 50 weeks, 25, 50 weeks he'll do in prison. What kind of prison are we talking about? Is this like a maximum?
The toughest prison in Britain. I mean, this is a AAA high security prison. The most violent offenders are sent there. Terrorists are sent there. Extremely dangerous people are sent there. Now, I've heard of the most extraordinary things happening in that prison. If you look at pictures of it, if you look at images of it, it's like a fortress, a modern fortress, and the guards are known to be exceptionally tough. Frankly, sending him to a prison like that is outrageous. I mean, I see no justification for that anyway. Both the sentence and the place where he's being held, deeply vindictive and very inappropriate and disproportionate behavior.
And deeply suspicious, and it seems like they're trying to break him in much the same way that they tried to break Chelsea Manning as well.
Well, indeed, exactly. And this is exactly what one has to be concerned about, because frankly, when he came out of the Ecuadorian embassy, he already looked extremely unwell. And do you really want to put an extremely unwell man, a sick man, in a prison like that, surrounded, as I said, by very violent people, some of them, as I said, terrorists? I mean, people who have done terrible things, and keep him in confinement in that way. I've also heard some very disturbing stories about the fact that he's been having trouble accessing his lawyers. So that's a bad thing in itself.
All right. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran, thank you very much. Guys, if you like this video, click on that subscribe button down below and click on the notifications bell to get notifications every time we push out a new video. Go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt, help support the Duran. In the description box down below, you will find links to our PayPal and Patreon pages. Please donate to the Duran. That really helps us out a lot. And you can get a copy of this video in audio format. Follow us on iTunes and on SoundCloud. And you can also follow us on Instagram, the Duran_com. And you can make sure you get all our notifications by downloading the Blank Chat app. And you can go to theduran.com and see all the articles that Alexander is looking up to every day. Alexander Mercouris, Editor-in-Chief of the Duran. Thank you once again. Until next time, everybody, take care.